What is death? What happens to us when we die? Vedic wisdom answers this profound question by outlining broad principles that shape the soul's journey after the body dies. The 3 stages of the soul's post-mortem journey also establish the process of reincarnation. The soul leaves the present body. It travels to the location of its next body, and then it enters the next body. According to this model, the soul is concealed by our physical body, which is referred to as the gross material body, and a subtle body, which consists of the mind, the intelligence, and the ego.
One of the great contributions of a text like the Bhagavad Gita and more largely schools of Sankhya and Yoga, and this would include Nyaya as well, is that there's 3 distinct things that they recognize. There's the gross physical world, and that would include the physical body. That's the visible physical body. This is something we call material. It's part of Prakriti, material nature. Its definition being that it's always in a state of transformation and flux. It's moving. They also recognize that part of the material nature is something we might call a subtle reality, a subtle dimension, or a subtle body, composed of what we call the mind. And this mind has different components to it. And the third thing that they recognize, and I do believe this is not something that's widely discussed in Western philosophy and theology, and therefore not discussed in Western science, is that they recognize consciousness as entirely separate from that. So you've got a gross physical body, the visible body. You've got the more subjective component of the mind. And then you've got a third thing called consciousness, or the Atman, or the Purusha. And the first 2 are entirely material. They are not considered to be part of the soul or the self at all. The soul is completely separable from both the mind and the body. And it can exist independently of them.
The subtle body is the medium through which the soul interacts with the gross body and the world outside. It is a repository of our past experiences and is responsible for making decisions on the basis of loss and gain. It also makes us believe that all we are is this body and not the soul. Can this relationship between the consciousness, the soul, and the body offer a potential explanation for the baffling phenomenon of near-death experiences and past life memories? There have been several documented cases in which people in states of medical unconsciousness have reported near-death experiences in which they have left their bodies and then accurately perceived what was going on around them. How can anyone perceive anything, accurately or inaccurately, while clinically brain-dead? If we understand that consciousness is transmitted through the subtle body to the brain, and then from the brain to the external world, then it is not a perplexing phenomenon anymore. When a person is unconscious, the normal pathway for seeing is obstructed, as the physical eyes are closed and the visual areas of the brain are not functioning. Nonetheless, the soul is always conscious. In fact, it is consciousness itself. And the subtle sense of sight is still capable of functioning. The soul, along with the subtle body, temporarily leaves the gross body, which is likely to happen under special circumstances when the body is severely distressed, damaged, or dysfunctional. In these kinds of situations, the soul can observe the gross body from outside itself, using the subtle sense of sight. This can account for the factual perceptions documented during near-death experiences, and can also explain a phenomenon even more puzzling. the ability of some blind patients to see during near-death experiences. There are numerous documented cases in which children in various parts of the world remember precise details about deceased people who they claim to have been in a previous life. At the moment of death, the soul and the subtle body leave the gross body and move to another gross body. The memories are stored not just in the physical brain, but also in the mind part of the subtle body. Theoretically, memories from one's past lives are available for recall in the present and future lives. But generally speaking, these memories are so deep within the mind that for most of us, they don't seem to exist at all. Nonetheless, in some rare individuals, memories of a past life remain. Often this is true for individuals who died suddenly, violently, or both. Because death is so abrupt and traumatizing in such a case, it may not allow the soul to fully process the death, and so unprocessed memories of the event remain in the next body as a sort of hangover. This can also offer an explanation for birthmarks and birth defects in some cases, involving past life memories. Many scientifically documented reports have shown that mental impressions can manifest themselves as physical marks on the body. The impressions of fatal wounds inflicted on the gross body are created in the mind. When that mind accompanies the soul into the next body, it can cause those impressions to be expressed as birthmarks or birth defects. Death actually occurs when the soul permanently leaves the gross material body.
One of the ways that the later tradition develops that this happens is through a term called the ahankara, or the ego. And it's the ego that allows this non-physical, this completely spiritual self to inhabit a particular body. The ego is what it ties the non-physical soul to the mental and the physical bodies. In a text like the Bhagavata Purana, it's described as a knot. It's what causes the connection between the non-physical self and the mental and the physical.
our taste and our budget, the soul's new suit is determined by its desires, its attachments, and the karma it has acquired. Similar to the belief system of the Greeks, as detailed by Plato, the 8.4 million species of the world are arranged in a graded hierarchy, with aquatics and plants at the bottom and humans at the top. Those towards the bottom are limited and depend on nature's arrangement to be elevated to the higher levels of the hierarchy. Thus, this hierarchy serves as the pathway for the progressive reincarnation of the soul. But this changes when the soul gets a human body. Why? Because the human body allows the soul to express its free will. The capacity of the human body to redirect its consciousness from a material to a spiritual level offers the soul an opportunity to escape the cycle of reincarnation and attain an eternal life. When we attain this destination, the mystery of reincarnation is unraveled, death transcended, eternity reclaimed.
And that's meant to comfort all of us. But the Bhagavad Gita is probably the central place one would go to when one thinks about eternal life, the reincarnation, as well as the end to the process of reincarnation. The cycles of coming and being and dying come to an end at some point, and that is moksha, of course.
The soul, equipped with this knowledge, can reside with the ever-loving, all-attractive absolute truth. This is the final destination of the soul.